And something happened in the Supreme Court today that we got to talk about it. It's about whether voters, listen to this closely, whether voters get to choose their politicians or politicians get to choose their voters. A ruling on an issue that we have been following a lot on this show, and that is gerrymandering. And it's a big deal. The court ruling today that when politicians draw district lines to try to guarantee that their side wins, it's not the court's job to stop them. Chief Justice John Roberts writing his majority opinion. Excessive partisanship in districting leads to results that reasonably seem unjust. But the fact that such gerrymandering is incompatible with democratic principles does not mean that the solution lies with the federal judiciary. We conclude that partisan gerrymandering claims present political questions beyond the reach of the federal courts. Beyond the reach of the federal courts. Justice Elena Kagan writing a scathing dissent. Here's what she wrote. She says, of all times to abandon the court's duty to declare the law, this was not the one. The practices challenged in these cases imperil our system of government. Part of the court's role is that system is to defend its foundation. In that system is to defend its foundations. None is more important than free and fair elections. That was Justice Elena Kagan in her scathing dissent. Gerrymandering. It puts free and fair elections in jeopardy. And that affects every American. We're going to talk a lot about that, more on that in just a moment. A really important ruling today on partisan gerrymandering saying federal courts must stay out of disputes over whether politicians go too far in drawing district lines to try to ensure their side wins. This ruling could fundamentally affect the balance of power in state legislatures and Congress. Here to discuss, Elliott Williams and Harry Litman. Good evening to both of you.
Hi, Don.
Elliott, let me start with you. How consequential is this ruling about partisan gerrymandering?
Oh, it's mandering. It's mandering.
It is mandering.
It is massive, and here's why. So what they said is that they can't, if it's political, they can't step in and can't rule and can't touch the districts. So what that means is I think it opens up the door to pretext in districting. So here's an example. Mississippi is a state in which Democrats are overwhelmingly African American. A sinister state legislator could say, I just want to suppress the Democratic vote in Mississippi, when in reality his intent or her intent is to suppress the black vote. And now federal courts can't touch that decision. Now, if it were to come out that this individual were trying to suppress the black vote, then obviously that's unconstitutional. But once you say it's political now, federal courts can't rule on it, and it sort of opens the door to a lot of sinister
It seems
behavior.
surprising because all of this talk about about elections and the bias and being rigged or whatever. I mean, this is the rigging. It seems. Are you surprised by this ruling?
And no, I'm not. Given look, it's a court that is selectively activist, let's say. This was a remarkable amount of restraint where they said that, this is something we can't rule on. This isn't the kind of restraint that the court exercised when, say, gutting public sector labor unions a year ago and, right, overturning a lot of precedents. So I'm kind of not surprised because this is another instance of the court just trying to fix a conservative vision and foist it on their jurisprudence.
Let's follow up on that because, Harry, because I want to know what you think about the Chief Justice Roberts. He acknowledged that it is a problem, but says the courts can't do anything about it. How do you reconcile that?
Yeah, it's incredibly defeatist, as Justice Kagan says. It's sad. Look, we're not talking about, I don't like to rank constitutional rights, but we're talking about the scaffolding of the entire political system. The use of gerrymandering to disenfranchise or dilute votes in the most rank way absolutely deprives citizens of the franchise and of the one-person, one-vote principle. Elliott is, of course, right. It gives rise to mischief and pretext on the racial side, but much broader than that is just the kind of rank, unapologetic, completely raw kinds of gerrymandering and protection of entrenched interests that were before the court today and that the framers had abhorrence for This is now beyond the reach. First time ever for a constitutional violation, and the violation that is constitutive of so many other individual rights.
Well, let me just read the quote because you mentioned Justice Elena Kagan, and in her dissenting opinion, she said, if left unchecked, gerrymanders like the ones here may irreparably damage our system of government. Of all times to abandon the court's duty to declare the law, this was not the one. The practices challenged in these cases imperil our system of government. Part of the court's ruling in that system is to defend its foundations. None is more important than free and fair elections. And she ended her dissent by saying it is with respect and deep sadness. I think, President Trump got the conservative, majority on the court here. They're mostly conservatives. Does that all come down to elections having consequences, you think? That's for you.
Do I think?
Yeah.
No. Yeah. No, look, I don't think. It's much, much broader than that. You could make it, it comes to, well, in this sense, he's put on the court a vision of really limited judicial power. It's not simply a Republican-Democratic idea. It's an idea of judicial power that is powerless in front of maybe the most important violation we have. You know, Don, for many years, we were leading to a point where the court was saying again and again, you go too far, we're going to come with something here. That's including Justice Kennedy. Now, with Kennedy gone, Kavanaugh and Gorsuch there, they throw their hands up, and this means, forevermore the kind of outright, everybody agrees, including Roberts, unconstitutional treatment is just beyond the reach of the court. Deep sadness is absolutely the proper response here.
And it can't be the case that the mere fact that elections, or at least this is on the elections of consequences point, it can't be the fact that the mere fact that a party loses an election means that civil rights sway every 10 or 20 years or whatever. Some rights are so fundamental, such as the integrity of our elections, but also the right to have your voice heard as a voter in the United States. And I think we should be careful about this notion that, well, the president won and there's a Republican Senate, QED, they're going to gut the right to have free and fair elections in the country.
It's interesting because when you say elections have consequences, usually people think, well, that's just for 4 years or that's just for 8 years or whatever. But when you're talking about the person who actually nominates who should or gets to decide in some way who should be on the Supreme Court, that can be life, that can be decades. That's a decades decision.
That's a decades decision, and the decision
It's
itself
a forever
is even more.
decision. The Constitution puts this off the table now.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow.
Well, we hope you enjoyed our video. If so, please give this video a thumbs up and hit that like button. Thank you for tuning in to the Center of Political Debates, Public and Press Discussions. We invite you to join our political news and debate community. Join by clicking the subscribe button below. Hit the bell button for notification of more breaking news political videos. And we also invite you to join our Facebook debate group and voice your political input. You can see the Facebook link in the description below. We'll see you soon with our next breaking news video.